Thanks for joining me. It's good to see you. My name is Jerrel. I develop games for a living, but I also do industry work in terms of consulting for marketing, public relations, brand management. I do composing work as well, and I am taking contracts for training, education, and running workshops. So if you are interested in gaming and game development, then I hope you're interested in this video. Today I'm going to be explaining why kicking in video game is cheating. It's absolutely cheating. So more than just being a game developer, I grew up with video games, so I obviously really enjoy games. Tekken 3 is a game that, it's probably the fighting game that I've played most throughout my life. I still enjoy booting up Tekken 3 and playing a couple matches with friends, but this is a game that really taught me that kicking is cheating. In this video I'm going to go over some frames, and we're going to explain in depth why kicking gives you such an advantage. But it's beyond giving you an advantage, it's basically cheating the other player. So first, in order to understand what I mean by that, we're going to take a look at what actually makes our characters function in a video game environment, especially when it comes to a fighting game. So we have two concepts to discuss. We have a hurt box and a hit box. So a hurt box is basically a collider on a character that detects hit boxes. Every character has hurt boxes. It allows them to receive damage from attacks. So I am going to draw in red the hurt boxes. If the character's hurt box happens to physically touch a hit box, then the character will receive the programmatic logic for receiving damage. So I'll draw the hurt boxes. Again, the hurt boxes are what make your player character vulnerable to damage. That is a hurt box. Now we will draw the hit box. The hit box is what allows a character to attack or deal damage to another player character or another character. I'll go ahead and draw that. That's basically the hit box there. If this hit box touches the other player's hurt box, then the player will receive damage. So in this standing position, you can see that the player can be hit basically anywhere. This is actually a pretty good punch for this character because his hurt boxes, you can see, because he's crouching, his hurt box for his head is actually obscured a little bit. You know, he's reduced in profile, so it makes him less vulnerable. Let's go ahead and have a look at some gameplay footage again. We'll scrub back again in this footage, and we'll see Eddie Gordo pretty oppressively applying pressure to Ling Xiaoyu, and we'll take a look and explain why that is. So Eddie Gordo has a couple very cheap moves that let him cheese enemies. You can see that he can do these cartwheel kicks, and you can apply pressure to the other player character pretty easily. You can see this move here is absurdly cheap, and we will take a look at that with frame data. But basically, if you take into account the description of the hurt boxes and the hit boxes, which we just went over, you can see all of Eddie Gordo's hurt boxes, the things that make him vulnerable, are very far away, and his hit boxes are able to reach very far. Let's go ahead and watch a little bit more of this gameplay here, and you can see you can basically cheese and cheat. And what allows Ling Xiaoyu to actually close the gap is this sort of maneuver here. We'll go ahead and get back to that here. And if we can pause at just the right time. You can see this maneuver obfuscates her hurt boxes, but also, because she is airborne, she is impervious to any attacks because she no longer has any hurt boxes that would be required for her standing. So any attacks down here will miss, and she now is able to extend her hit boxes. So Let's go ahead and take a look at that. And she can actually repeat that movement quite quickly. So let's go ahead and analyze some frames of data here. Let's go ahead and draw our hurt boxes. You can see Eddie Gordo's hurt boxes are basically here and here. So if he's hit there, then he will receive damage. He can be knocked out of his attack. We have hurt boxes, but also these should still be hurt boxes, but we also have his hit box here. And you can see the majority of the logic that makes him vulnerable is quite far away from the enemy, and this is able to reach quite far. And you can see there isn't really a reason to draw Yoshimitsu's data as he is not attacking. Now let's go ahead and have a look at this here. So all of his hurt back boxes, a significant portion are actually shifted away. And we now have this hitbox that reaches very far, and it would be very difficult for the player character or the enemy character to counter that, because striking up here, the opposing character doesn't really have any attacks that can reach down here without making themselves vulnerable. If Yoshimitsu were to crouch, his head would be vulnerable to that, and if he were to kick, he would be very vulnerable to that if he were to punch. So the opposing character doesn't really have a way to counter that, and there's nothing up here that makes Eddie Gordo vulnerable. We'll take a look at this frame here. And Tekken is a 3D fighter. It takes into account the Z-axis or the Z-axis. And all of the hurt boxes are shifted away. And again, we have this nice big hitbox here, and the opposing character would basically have to jump over that and approach from the top and then attack with an aerial move. So this is quite unfair. You would have to block, but because of Eddie's logic, the vast majority of his moves are multi-hit. So even if the other player blocks, they're going to receive shield stun, which means that even if they block the attack, they receive some stun, so they're not able to act immediately. And Eddie Gordo is able to act so quickly that even if the enemy were to shield that, he can just continue button mashing and spamming attacks. This right here is the greatest evidence for cheating. These are all of the hurt boxes, and they are now entirely 100% out of reach of the opposing character. There is nothing that the opposing character can do in order to counter this to damage, because all of his attacks would basically reach here, and anything that he would need to do to get within range of this attack, they would be hit by this hitbox here. Here's a similar situation, but this is a multi-hit, so it's even worse. The previous attack was a single hit. This is a multi-hit, so it's even tougher to deal with. So you can space this out and even approach. You can perform this maneuver from farther away, from a farther distance, but you can see it's very hard to counter that because the opposing enemy has no way to deal with that threat. There's no way to close the gap. And Tekken does not rely on things like projectiles. Sure, some characters have disjoints, but they are not projectile based in the way that, say, for example, Street Fighter is. So this is a situation where it can be unfair, and basically Eddie Gordo can cheat. He can cheat by basically cheesing the system and granting himself an advantage that many other characters are not able to grant themselves. So this is a situation where punching puts you at a disadvantage. You can see that the opposing character has many ways to deal with this. Law is out of range of that, and Law can do many things in terms of low attacks to kick and hit the hurt box here. This is a problem that is unique to punching, because in order for the punch to make sense, your hurt boxes are more visible. They're more within reach. Your head hurt box is well within reach. The other player can jump and perform an attack that would hit the player's head. They can perform a medium kick. They can actually reach under that and kick and hit the player here, hit the player here. This is something that puts punch-based characters at a significant disadvantage because it doesn't matter how strong your punch is, you will be outranged, and your hurt boxes will be in a position where they are more accessible to the opponent. So this is the problem that we run across, is that punching makes you vulnerable. It exposes the rest of your hit or your hurt boxes, whereas kicking, say for example, obscures your hurt boxes. It puts them out of reach of the other player. You would have to have very odd moves and odd animations for your punching to be able to have the benefits of this, especially like this. You would not be able to do that with a punch, and punches tend to make your character vulnerable. So that is a topic that's interesting and useful to consider, because if you have friends over to play some games and you really want to beat them in a fighting game and they're a bit better than you, pick a character that does big kicks. Pick Horong, for example. He has kicks that generally have a lot of forward mobility to them, and he can also cheat. Horong is a great big cheater. Jin has real strong, powerful punches, but again, he has the issue of his hurt boxes being exposed while he is punching. There are multiple ways to address this issue. You can give characters weapons like swords, axes, poles, sticks that are connected in segments through chains, a big rope, a blade at the end of a rope, and the blade is in the shape of a big love heart. Anything. There's many other ways to increase the range of a punch, and that's basically what is required in order for punches to not put the player at a disadvantage here. You can see Jin generally does better when he has forward mobility with this kicks, but Tekken 3 is a 3D fighter, so you can use the foreground and background to avoid attacks. Now we discuss frame data. Punching is significantly faster, which means that punches start faster and there's less end lag. End lag is the time during which your character is vulnerable and unable to perform any further actions after they have performed their maneuver. Kicking tends to have longer startup, which means it takes longer for the attack to start, and longer end lag, which means your character is more vulnerable after performing their attack. However, as you can see with Eddie Gordo, many of his attacks are multi-hits and they're combo-based, and so there's basically a non-stop flurry of, if you'll pardon my French, this is a technical term, bullshit. Eddie has a very strong bullshit factor. As you can see, it's pretty much non-stop that he's able to obscure his hurt boxes and just throw out his random bullshit by button mashing. Your 10-year-old cousin can come over and totally destroy you in Tekken without any experience, even though you've been playing for years. And so that is the logic explaining why kicking in video games is cheating. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and if you have a favorite character in Tekken, let me know. For me, I really enjoy Horong and Eddie. I mean, I just outed myself as a cheater in Tekken, didn't I? But I also enjoy Brian Fury as well, and Lily too. So anyway, there's a ton of characters in Tekken. Thanks for watching. Take care of yourselves. Be well.